everything set up here. Hello and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel and to our live stream Q&A, Ask Me Anything, Part 2, every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We follow up what we did Friday at the same time by answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, geopolitics, past and present, geography, political science, things like that. And today we have another hour of Q&A for you guys where we will be answering all of your questions about history and social studies. So if you like that kind of thing, I think you're probably going to be in the right place. Consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. It's as easy as that. We're over 9,300 strong and are moving forward towards 10,000, hopefully in September at some point. So yeah, anything helps the channel, a super chat, a perk comment, becoming a member, all of that. That would be fantastic if you guys could do that. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel and to our Saturday live stream Q&A, where we deliver history in an amicable, communal manner that we think you would all very much like. Please be sure to like the live and subscribe for more. And think about becoming a member for early access, bonus videos, and all sorts of great stuff. We have long-form videos dropping every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually, although our long-form video happened today. And we also have shorts that happen every day as well here on the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Hello, Rodolfo, my moderators here, and Gayahan, good to see you as always. So if you have a question about history, drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer it. And we'll see what happens. We've got another hour to go, so it's going to be hopefully a fun way to spend our Saturday and all of that great stuff. So yes, it's good to see everybody. We need Harry and Hars back. Well, we'll see when they join, if they join. We were able to run a really fun and enjoyable live stream yesterday, and really neither of them were really able to show up. So let's see here. So who has questions about history or social studies? Solomon, if you could put the social media handles in the chat, go to the YouTube page and find them. We have a Substack where you can read my articles, a Patreon where you can get early access, as well as my First Ladies series. There's also X, Instagram, and Facebook for social media updates and sometimes early releases there as well. And of course, there is a TikTok where we have more bonus content and stuff like that, and a lot of the content that is there is not here, and some of the content that is here is not there, so you got to go for both. You got to follow me on YouTube, and you got to follow me on TikTok. So yes, a happy Saturday to all of you. Hopefully your weekend is going very well, and we want to welcome you to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, where we do history in a friendly, neighborly manner. And yes, for the next hour or so, I'll be answering all of your questions about history and social studies. So if you have a topic or a comment or a question you would like to discuss, please drop it in the chat. Solomon, go to the YouTube page. There are the links there. If you're using a computer or even your phone, you can copy the links and you can come back and put them in the chat. What was life like before the Bronze Age, before city-states? How did humans originally band together and establish defensive walls in societies? Stratification, social stratification for human beings was mainly a way of understanding the different roles that you had in society. You had different families and groups of people merging their farming together, usually in some sort of communal way, to develop a society where you could use different types of crops at different times and you could harvest them at different times. You obviously needed a consistent supply of water, so rivers were huge connections, were huge points where societies could and civilizations could easily develop. You had that, but you also needed people to protect it. So you developed the idea of walls, of building fortifications to protect you, but you also developed a soldier class who would be willing to protect all of the goods. You needed tools to make your farming a little bit easier. You needed people who raised animals. You needed livestock. You needed a reliable sense of livestock. So you had animal farming. You had animal husbandry. You also had the development of animals for food sources. So you not only kept some animals, but you were also able to use them for eating. You needed somebody to kill the animals, to provide, to cook their meat and things like that. So rather than large game hunting that had been common in the lithic eras, the Stone Ages, it became more common for human beings to harvest animals that were smaller and easier to access. So there's I don't know how Harsh does it then, Solomon, but anyways, yes, so with Gaihan, basically humans use their different ties tight. Basically, humans use their different had different roles to fulfill in order to keep the food source going and to live together and be able to access those food sources. You needed people who could develop and build tools, who could develop and build homes. So you had a stratification of society. You already have the layout of merchants, of craftsmen, of soldiers, and you needed something, a binding culture around you. So that helped develop the religious classes, as well as the stratification that led to rulers, city-states, and kings. But basically, the need for food, for reliable sources of food, is what helped develop the Green Revolution and eventually a farming system where people could live together in communities. So, G-Money, don't do that. That's going to hurt you. The rate of death in early civilization should make anyone proud of their standard of living today. Absolutely true. Life was difficult, cruel, and oftentimes quite short. There was very little, if not no, medical treatment whatsoever. Okay. I hope your teacher is handsome, Daniel. Harry is crying. He got owned 7 times. Nah, no. Harry, like any good historian, has a wealth of knowledge and information, and if he finds out something that he didn't know before and it contradicts its narrative, it can be hard for someone to accept that. It's hard for me to accept it sometimes. What is your religion and what are you talking about? This is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is our Q&A where you can ask me anything about history or social studies. I don't share my religious perspectives, but if you have historical religious questions about different historical religions, I'd be happy to answer and talk about. Hello, thank you for joining us. Yes, no twerking. Where are you going? Right here, staying here in my new formal wear we're doing at the channel. Why did the IRS make you report your worth and incomes even though you don't live in the USA anymore? Because if you earned any money in the United States, they want it badly. Why are you wearing a tie indoors? We do formal wear here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. We just started, so live streams on a lot of videos. I'm dressed nicely, so I figured to put on a tie for that, so hopefully it's a nice one. The Lancastria disaster, 1940. I don't know what that is, Jim. I don't know everything. I know a lot about history, but I don't know everything. I am a historian with both a master's and bachelor's in history, Zapatak. So yes, and I believe anyone who studies historian, anyone who shows history, anyone who shows interest in it, anyone who devotes any of their time to learning and reading history, or even just watching videos, making comments on them, stuff like that, like what you're doing, makes you a historian. So that's why I don't call myself a friendly neighborhood historian. I refer to the people who like and subscribe as friendly neighborhood historians because they have found a way to learn about history. So if you like and subscribe, you can become a friendly neighborhood historian. Not a PhD, not yet, but I'll get there. Tina, hello. I didn't know who passed away. Teach you about stocks. NVIDIA, one word, NVIDIA. How is the sun? I mean, NVIDIA is like scheduled to be the most expensive. I mean, it's a social science factor. Economics is obviously part of social sciences, so as a social scientist, I have to study that too. NVIDIA is like scheduled to be the most expensive company in history. The sun. The sun is a star. I don't know exactly how stars are created. You look like a true leader. I don't know. I'm just a history guy. Hello, Ava. What's your thought on the Indonesian parliament? What's going on with it right now? Is it kind of I would imagine it's kind of a coalition system with a prime minister. So, was Julius Caesar called the uncrowned emperor? I think he was, but that's kind of a... He was. The Romans do not like the idea of tyranny. They do not like the idea of kings and dictators. So emperor or Caesar was easier for them to use. The 7 Roman kings who had started off the tradition of Romans hating tyranny left a bitter taste in the mouth of many people during the Republican era. So when Julius Caesar demands to be dictator for life, they are thinking of Tarquinius the Proud and all the other Roman kings who were tyrants, and so they're not going to settle for that. However, Augustus is able, through his political savvy and wisdom, to basically manipulate the Roman Republic into basically collapsing in on itself and giving him more and more power. And it's not a king or a tyrant or a dictator, it's an emperor. It's a Caesar, basically lying heavily on the last name. I am not a member of Mensa. Captain India, good to see you as always. Natasha might be Russian, could be. You failed. It's the single biggest loss of life for the British in World War II. You know nothing. Churchill plus put a D notice on it so it wasn't reported to keep stuff, the stiff upper lip narrative. I would not be surprised about that. It sounds very British, and it sounds like something that Churchill would do. NVIDIA, Nvidia, I think. How did the Parthians win at Carrhae? If I'm correct, if I got the right battle. Oh yeah, Carrhae was where Marcus Crassus was defeated. Basically, the Parthian horse archers just surrounded the Romans and picked off the different soldiers, the cohorts of soldiers that Crassus had one by one. Do you think that Iran is going to get split up if USA and Israel get their way, or do you think there is too few? I don't think anything's going to happen on Iran. Israel genocida. Okay, you're allowed your opinion. Where did the Barsid family come from? Not sure. Concerning ancient history, what can you tell us about the senator Marcus Pesilionius? I don't know, Fausto. How did the Crusades change Europe and Middle East religion? It made it very clear that that region was going to stay Muslim, and it brought the knowledge and learning of that area back, so that ancient texts and scripts from ancient church sources, Jewish sources, philosophers were more commonly proliferated in the West, which helped spark Renaissance learning. So yeah. Hello, Aster. Good to see you. Why is that no matter what color the soap is, the lather is always white? It's the chemical reaction of the water and the chemicals in the soap. Creates a white, and that's where you get the suds and the bubbles and all that. I'm sorry that Civilization 7 is not great. Was Saladin the best Arab leader? Definitely among the top. He was not an Arab, however. He was Kurdish. He led the Egyptians. But if you're talking about Muslim leaders, he's definitely one of the best. I would say some of the Ottomans, Suleiman and Mehmet, are a little bit better. They obviously conquered on a much greater scale, but Saladin is up there. And you've got to look at the Pashtun Caliphate and their ability to conquer the Middle East and North Africa in a very, very big fell swoop. So, are UFOs real? They definitely are real. What's in them? Who are they created by? Governments, militaries, or by extraterrestrial life is the real question. Interesting thought I had yesterday. What would you do if your dad wanted you to play football? I'm an adult, so I don't have to do what my dad says. Do you know the legend of General? Yeah. Seriously? The African warlord? Sounds like a prank, Bale. What do you know about Cassius? Cassius was one of the senators who helped assassinate Julius Caesar. He was supposedly extraordinarily wealthy. Shakespeare obviously made Cassius far more famous than he probably was, but Cassius, like Brutus, was from an extremely wealthy and powerful Roman family. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, I answered your Haiti question. Well, I'm glad I did that. I'm going to Jeremy Clarkson's farm tomorrow. Okay. Have fun. Good evening, Michael. Good to see you at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. I play Rise of Kingdoms, so that's how I know most of these people. Yep, that's a fair one. What do you want to know about Malcolm X? Civil rights leader, part of the Nation of Islam, eventually kind of dissuaded from those ideas, became a little bit more open to a more moderate form of the civil rights, but before had been very much a black separatist and had clashed with a lot of Martin Luther King's ideas earlier on. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Belle. You don't know General Button. That's fair. I do not watch Vice narratives. I've always been more of a Ligma history kind of guy. What do you mean by that, Ronald? I do not know where that is. And dragons, don't be rude to other religions. We have people from all different religions, all different backgrounds, and all over the world who join us all the time. It's always a lot of fun. Oh, you're hilarious, Ronald. That's just absolutely fascinating. Nobody cares that you made a joke. From far away, Rocky, New York. James, good to see you as always. Hello, Divine. Is Trump's America First policy ruining relation of U.S. with the rest of the world? It all depends on where you're talking about. It has obviously hurt U.S. relations with several different countries. India and China have been among them. It has complicated affairs in the Middle East. Obviously, the bombing of Iran has been a big issue. Geopolitically, it's kind of done an interesting thing where it's put demands on Western countries that at first they didn't seem willing to fulfill. But the European Union trade deal, NATO increasing its spending, obviously them and Zelensky working towards peace with the Ukrainian war. Trump's image in the West is actually pretty strong from what you can. It's surprising because a lot of the times it seems extremely oafish, brutish, and doesn't get a lot done, especially at first. I mean, look at the first Zelensky meeting. But even Canada now is willing to deal on potential trade talks, where Trump has had also an up and down. He's had some good relationships in Africa and Southeast Asia. He's had some real struggles with India. There's kind of a nationalist class with Narendra Modi. And obviously, Trump has also struggled with some Central and South American leaders. Claudia Steinbaum of Mexico and Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela are two good examples of that. But he's had good relations with Javier Milei of Argentina, and obviously also Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador. The reason of the wars in all the world, Islam. Yes, because the Crusades were totally caused by Islam. Yes, the Spanish Inquisition was caused by Islam. Everything bad has been caused. That's totally not true. The Europeans had no problems fighting and killing each other, especially after the Protestant Reformation, when Protestant versus Catholic fought each other all the time. Christianity had plenty of problems with it, just like Islam did. You had Sunnis and Shiites, the Safavids versus the Ottomans throughout much of the 16th and 17th centuries. Religion is just a vehicle that people use to promote their ideologies, worldviews, and the way that they live. And people who are corrupt and power hungry and things like that can use religion to any foresight. Religion is just a tool. It is not the religion that makes people this way. It is something psychologically about who we are as people that makes us this way. That's why I love studying the human condition. That's why I love studying history, and I hope you do too, and I hope you've liked and subscribed and you're having a great day. Did the Hashishans tip the power balance in the Crusades? I don't know which crusade I think they fought in several different ones, but they were definitely the elite assassins of the Middle East, and they were definitely really successful at helping to destroy the Crusader states. Isn't Jeremy Clarkson the guy from Top Gear? Oh no. Anyways, meme. Do you think there is a chance the UK could be plummeting towards a civil war due to the government taking down their own flag? This is a fascinating thing that I saw, and it was quite surprising to me. So several Brits, furious that their government took down the English flag, put up the Palestinian flag, took the flag down and have replaced them in several areas with English flags. These flags were quickly painted over or taken down as well. There's definitely a crisis of nationalism versus multiculturalism in Britain. As an American, it's easy to think of multiculturalism as a good thing. Diversity is a good thing. The immigration history of America is obviously a huge part of this. America was built in many ways by immigrants. Europe has much more of an ethnically driven identity. So Britain is obviously defined by being for the Brits, and things like this, and being created by Brits, having an obvious British society. It has much lower proliferation of ethnic minorities than the United States, although that has changed because of immigration from other parts of the world that have been destabilized by the actions internationally of the UK in many situations, such as their colonialism in Africa. So that's obvious. There is a cultural crisis of identity, and the right and the left can't get any further in Britain or in the rest of Europe, because the right has gone real hard with the Reform in Britain, the AfD in Germany, and now the National Front on the rise in France, whereas center-left parties, Labour, I forget the name of Macron's party, and the Social Democrats in Germany and the Green Party have pushed really hard for multiculturalism. I'm doing well, Divine. I hope you're doing great too. I don't want us to associate with India or China. I don't want slave goods. There's a lot of questions about the ethical ramifications of getting goods from China that run sweatshops. That hasn't been a big concern for the tariff argument. The Trump administration has not argued we're not going to get slave goods from China. We just want China to pay their fair share. We are sick and tired of losing every trade deal with China and all of that stuff. There hasn't been as much of the ethical argument, but that is one argument people use for tariffs. They're willing to pay a little bit more in inflation to not get goods made by sweatshops. And I don't know how, and that's up to every person to be willing to put their money where their mouth is, because they're going to need to put more of the money down to buy more of those goods with tariffs. Let me see here. Preston, I told you about those in confidence. Hello, Ash. Biden had plans, not what plans. Where did the modern French people come from? Are Franks different from the Normand or Celtics or German tribes or Scandinavian tribes who were all early groups of Europe? France is an amalgamation of very much different Celtic and Germanic tribes. The Franks were one of these. They're not all just the Franks. The Gauls were a particular people group that settled in that area. The Normans were a mix of them. Again, there's a huge amalgamation and mixing of all these people to create a national identity in Europe. And the Normans were Vikings that settled in that area. Rollo was the name of the man who was basically gifted the Duchy of Normandy because to pacify Viking invasions and incursions and raids in France, which were very common in the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries. And so he basically set up his own duchy there, and so there was a mix of the Norse culture with the French culture, and that's why Normandy was called the land of the Norseman. Canada signed an agreement with Mexico to go around us, and once Indonesia joined BRICS, 60% of the global. Yep, that's very true. The BRICS nations are gaining in economic influence and all of that stuff. It's not Islam, in my humble opinion. It's religious fanaticism, and you see that in Israel right now. Yes, and you see it in Gaza too. You see it anywhere you look. You can find religious fanaticism. I will say that religions go through historical shifts and changes. There was a time where radical Islam was far more peaceful than radical Christianity during the Middle Ages, especially. There now seems to be, but radical Islam today is far more virulent than radical Christianity is today. You can't travel to Israel or Iran. Why is that? Why can't you travel to either, dragons? There's Iranians who live in Israel. Is the Mandela effect real? I think it's just a psychological confusion, so yes. Hello, Jalen. Is this AI? This is not AI. This is Patrick. Do you think the Askari were as successful as the Hashishans? I don't know enough about them to comment. The fact that I know more about the Hashishans probably means they were more successful. Who started the slave trade? The slave trade had existed on almost every continent in some way, shape, or form. The Africans started it, but what made it international was the Arab slave traders who influenced Arab Muslim conversions in West Africa, but also extracted slave populations from different areas in Africa, and continued it even after the Europeans had abolished their slave trade. Obviously, the Europeans made it an intercontinental system that deprived Africa of its manpower and its ability to fight back against invaders, which made it a lot easier for them to colonize them in the 19th century. Has Christ's existence been proven? Pretty much. From a historical perspective, yes. Why do people always try to partner up gay rights with black people? A lot of people feel that civil rights belong to all people of different backgrounds, and some people are willing to make a slight categorical error to say that black people with people of ethnic minorities are the same as people of sexual minorities. And the argument and the hope is for the same, for civil rights and fair treatment for all peoples. Let me see here. Is the USA headed towards race segregation? No. The segregation in the United States today is almost always self-inflicted. People choose not to live in a certain area with a certain group of people for certain different reasons. I mean, UCLA wanted separate graduation ceremonies, one for African Americans and one for white people, so that African Americans could have their moment in the sun. And I'm thinking, wait a second, they had that before, and black people hated it then. Christ almost certainly existed. We just don't know if he actually performed miracles. Right. The religious. So I look at the gospel narratives from the New Testament and I compare them to the historical narratives of Thucydides, Herodotus, Plutarch. And it was very common for ancient writers of Greek and Roman origin. The Greeks basically invented the art of writing history, writing historical accounts. It's very common for them to say, and then Zeus did this, or then Athena stepped in, or Minerva, or something like that, or Janus. All these ancient gods of these people. So it was very common for them to have that idea. So it's not uncommon for the Christian Gospels to say Jesus performed miracles. It's not completely out of the ballpark for people of a religious background, of a religious faith, to claim in the biography of their leader that he indeed did these religious things, or that God intervened, or the gods intervened in one way or another. So when I look at the New Testament, the Gospels, I say, yes, they're a reliable account of the life of Jesus of Nazareth, in the sense that they tell the story of this rabbi who claimed certain things about himself and was eventually executed by the Romans. I hope the guy from Jeepers Creepers is good looking. What is your opinion on how the UK gave France $800 million to stop immigrants coming over, but all they are doing to bring them on buses to the beach and escorting them to the border? That sounds like something the French would do. The British have been pretty adamant about stopping the boats that have brought the tens of thousands of immigrants from France. Thank you, Captain India. I really appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. The blacks are the only race who don't know their history. White people who don't want to tear down Confederate statues definitely don't know their history in the American South. The Crusades were a result of the Islamic world sacking Rome. The Islamic world never sacked Rome. But they are a result of Muslim incursions into Byzantine lands and harassment of Christian pilgrims. Hello, James. Hello, Deepak. Thank you for joining us from India. Love to have people from all over the world here at Friendly Neighborhood History. This is our Q&A. Every Saturday we do a Q&A where I answer all your questions about history and social studies. Okay, Lucy. Let's not get too personal. Like and subscribe if you enjoy history. Hello, Jen. Good to see you. What pacified Muslim expansion in countries? I think just the ability to not get any farther. What stopped the Muslim incursions into France was victories like that of Tours by Charles Martel. The victories of the Holy League, the Knights Templar, stopped the Ottomans from continual incursions into Central Europe in the middle of the 16th century, so there's that too. Let me see here. And yes, great to see Hars, my wonderful moderator here. Show him some love in the chat. He just put up our social media handle so you guys can follow that. And if I haven't answered your question yet, I apologize. I will get there as soon as I can. Okay, sorry about that. Jehovah's Witness at the door. Let me see. Where was I? Or was it? Okay, let me see. Is the Trinity concept inspired by Greco mythology? I don't think so. From what I understand, the idea is Christians took implied verses and ideas from the Old Testament and harmonized it with Christ's claim that he was divine. If you look at the ancient Romans, they had triads of worship are quite common in ancient theologies. It's obvious. It's common to have in polytheistic theological societies of the Egyptians, Romans, and Greeks hundreds and not if not thousands of gods. But it's also common to have major gods that obviously speak out. Osiris in Egypt, you have Osiris, you have Isis, you have Horus. In the ancient Romans had two different triads they worshipped early in their history. They later re-identified and reappropriated them as the Greek gods. I think the first one was Quirinus, who became Janus. It's the god of the creation, where we get January from. You had Zeus, and you had Ares, the god of war. Later it became Zeus, Minerva, and I think Ares or something like that. So, and Ares is in the Romans, he's Mars. So you have triads of worship are common, but I don't think that's where the Christian Trinity come from. Cuties, you get your shout out. Thank you. Great to see you, Ti. You're so nice. Skylar, hello. How come Romans adopted Catholicism? High birth rates, interest in the Christian message, a lack of social resistance, and basically the Roman Empire the decline of the Roman Empire in the 3rd century, the century of chaos, led to many persecutions of the Christian church, but also to it being a more popular option for many people to take. It seemed to have a balance and a semblance of morality and order that the Roman Empire itself did not have. They had a chaotic time of invasions. Things were falling apart. One emperor was throwing off another, and birth rates for the native population decreased while Christian birth rates increased dramatically. If I haven't answered your question, I apologize. I'm doing my best to get to everybody's questions as soon as I possibly can. Good morning to you, Niba. Good to see you. I am not in school currently. Do you think religion could potentially spread in modern China if the CCP relaxed our atheistic policy? Probably. Any communist society that does that soon finds an explosion of religious activity. You think you should destroy parts of history? No. Obviously not. I think all history exists for a reason, but Nathan, you knew I was going to answer that, so you have another question, so please ask that one. What do you think about India? I love India's history. I love its society. I love its culture. Are you raising money? I mean, yeah, I'll take a donation. I'll take a super chat. I'll take someone getting a membership. That would be fantastic to help the channel grow, but no pressure whatsoever. If you're enjoying this, like and subscribe. That helps more than enough, but yeah. He should be running a country, never mind in school. I appreciate that. Thank you, but I would not be a good politician, and people have pointed this out. I just don't have the charisma for it. I tend to just think about things in solutions and facts and in logic and try to come up with a good solution, and you can't do that in politics. You have to manipulate people. The Islamic sacking of Rome refers to a raid in 846 AD when Arab raiders plundered the environs of Rome, sacking old St. Peter The raiders were prevented from breaching the city's Aurelian walls, but were able to load themselves with treasures and relics from the churches located just outside the walls. The raid was carried out by the Saracens. Yeah, but 2 centuries of separation, a crusade would have happened a lot sooner. It was because of Manzikert and the defeat and the Seljuk Turks attacking Christian pilgrims. Is MAGA hijacking the Christian movement? I think there's a lot of Christians in the United States, because of their views on social issues, who have joined MAGA, some of them hesitantly, some of them eagerly, and then all of a sudden they are defending positions that normally Christians would not defend. But it's a cultural movement. It's a realignment, a reinterpretation of the religious right and of conservative republicanism, where you have a new generation rising up. Many of them are Christians. They're more into traditional forms of mainline Christianity, and you have a rise of nationalism in the Republican Party, whereas conservative Republicans in the past were generally pretty nationalistic, but weren't like outspoken about it and acting like there was only one country or one main country to focus on, that being the United States. You could see that in the Reagan years, but you don't see quite as much of an explicit nationalism, and you can see the Christians supporting Trump kind of acting in a similar pattern to the Christians who supported Reagan, but it's much more about who they hate and are scared of, the left, than who they love. Trump obviously doesn't act like a Christian. It'd be hard for him to convince people that he is one. Where does your profile pic come? Red Eiffel Tower. I wanted it just to represent Paris, which is my favorite city all time. So that's why I put up the Red Eiffel Tower. I'll have to change it at some point. When I get a brand, we're going to get a brand. We're going to get an internet. We're going to get scripts. We're going to get upgrades to the studio here. Any donation, any money that goes into this channel is used for the beatification of the studio, the improvement of our technology, and our ability to reach more people through the design of a brand and all of that. And that is what we're going to be doing in the next month or so. There's going to be upgrades coming to the channel studio, to the sound equipment, coming as early as Labor Day weekend next week. So join us there. We're going live 4 days in a row Labor Day weekend. So I really hope you can all join us for that. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. But yes, there's new brands coming. So anything you donate, a membership, any of that helps the channel grow, and I use it to make this experience better for all of us. Yeah. Zinyak, you get one more of those, and then you're out of here. Why didn't you invite the JW in? Because I was doing my thing, and I don't want to talk about religion with the JW. I'd rather talk about religious history with you guys. How to battle injustice in Christian movement. What do you mean by that? What injustice are you looking at? What's wrong with the tie? The tie is fine. Arabs who were expanding into southern Italy and were drawn to their cities, riches, and states of disrepair. Not surprised. Ever since the Roman Empire, Rome had been in an infrastructural decline. In your opinion, what has been the most economic system to lift the most people out of poverty? It's not like it's perfect, obviously, but capitalism generally tends to be good at lifting people out of poverty. Globalization has helped a lot. That's why India and China have seen such economic transformation in the last 50 years. Generally speaking, if you look at data trends, a mechanized, industrialized society that then becomes a service economy tends to do the best at lifting people out of poverty. It improves medical conditions. And that involves some form of capitalism, usually one that has some sort of accountability where workers are treated fairly so that they have human rights and they have the basic ability to live in a better way than they had before. Aisha, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I never like the sound of my voice, but people on the channel do, so thank you. Say a prayer for me. I'm going into detox soon. Good luck, Iria. We will keep you in our thoughts and prayers. Politician is a dirty word, unfortunately. There are some good ones, and doesn't always have to be a dirty business. But you look at the first few American presidents, they were not politicians, they were statesmen. Many people in the West have gotten away from statesmanship and look at only politics. What do you think about doing Theodore Roosevelt's live stream lecture this Sunday? I'll put them up as an option, but you guys get to vote here on the Friendly Neighborhood History channel on YouTube. I have heard of them, Faith Johnson. I am not married. Hassan, hello. It's always great to have you here. You have such great stuff. We need Trump in Ireland. I've heard that. I don't know. You got Conor McGregor. So you get Timu Trump, which a lot of people on the right think is Timu Javier Milei. So I don't think Christendom could muster a strong enough force to fight Islam at that time. They could have tried. They could have at least tried to retake Spain. I made a video about chapstick, yes, because believe it or not, my lips are in better shape now than usual. I have large lips. It's a blessing and it's a curse because it's easy for them to get dried out and for me to need chapstick. USDA shut down Eferdine, chain from CCP to U.S.-Mexico border. Why is fentanyl so difficult? Fentanyl is difficult because the way it's produced is changed from different areas. It can be produced in many ways and in different countries. So the United States wanted to shut down bringing in ethanol from bringing in fentanyl from China. China changed its base of operations to Mexico and partnered with Mexico and the cartels to send them there. Whatever, Maurice. Are you okay with rage baiting and caps raging on a channel that you don't know about and you're not listening to? What is the difference between Sunni Islam and Shia Islam? Great question about religious history there. I enjoy talking about it. And somebody gave a super chat, and I want to just acknowledge them and say thank you. Oh, I really appreciate it, UK. So nice of you to do so. You gave me £1. And lots of love. Really like having you here. You say some great stuff. But wisdom of life, basically, Sunni Islam believes that the follower of Muhammad needs to be the best possible leaders. The most religious and moral of leaders should lead the Islamic State, the Caliphate. The Shia Muslims believe that the successor to Muhammad should lead. Muhammad's son-in-law fought a war against a general who was backed by Muhammad's wife. It was the first Islamic civil war in 661, and the general won, and he created, I forget his name right now, he created the Umayyad dynasty, and the Sunni have been the dominant force. However, the Shia have had a monopoly on some powerful centers in Islam, such as Iran, since the 16th century. Let me see here. Is it correct to say that a majority of what we consider modern U.S. politics started developing around circa 2015? I suppose Democratic thinking shifted heavily around 2012, Obama's second term. Yeah, there's definitely a shift. A lot of people want to say that politics has become nasty and divisive because of Donald Trump, but it was like that before then. It was just more subtle. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Americans have been proud to be American. What's unnatural is socialism. Americans have rights to be proud of their country, as I think almost every country does. But that doesn't, I don't know where I'm wrong about any of that. Why should I strike you with flames when thousands of false reports on your channel can silence you more completely? I don't know. Bet. Did you vote for Trump? Why are you screaming your answers at us? All caps rage. For somebody who seemingly is asking about Trump, you are impersonating him by doing the all caps thing. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Oh, wait, I don't share my personal beliefs on this channel. I share geopolitical impressions based on historical trends, and I look at things as they are happening, and I critique both sides based off of what I see as historically reasonable solutions, culturally reasonable solutions, and what just seems like common sense. But I don't consistently share my political opinions on all sorts of different issues. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. History Hefner does not have his robe on today because it's too dang hot. But I do have my tie on for formal wear, so yeah. Let's see here. Different hadiths. There's definitely different religious tradition, differing views on the conception of God, but there's a main reason. It's all about Islamic ecclesiology. Go on holiday, that would be fun. I'd love to go to Great Britain. I could meet Harry, I could meet Simon the Bunny, my two wonderful moderators. And then I would go over to Ireland to hang out with Iria and maybe even Conor McGregor if he becomes president. That would be kind of a trip. What is the least popular at the time thing a leader has done that has done the most good now and is seen as good historically? Oh, that's a great question. Ooh. Unpopular at the time, popular in retrospect, actually worked out pretty well. The Civil War strikes me as one of those things, but I don't know how unpopular it really was. I don't think it was that unpopular. It's a tough one. There's ones that could occur to me that would actually turn out to be right, but it's a retrospective sort of thing. That's a great question, dude. Wars, you've kind of stumped me almost. Definitely, when I think of the Romans, and I think about Hadrian solidifying the Roman Empire and creating domestic borders that were protective. I think that although some may see that as Rome starting to regress, it actually stabilized the empire and did not overextend its resources and land, although Rome was already overextended. So Hadrian doing that wasn't necessarily popular. The Romans were used to fighting, but in 117, after he became emperor, he decided Rome would become an insular defensive empire and not an offensive empire anymore. Are you Skymocasting on other platforms like TikTok. No, I go live once in a while on Instagram. I'm gonna get a Discord and a Twitch once I get enough funds for a better laptop. So yes, I'm the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and if you like and subscribe, hence sips, you could be a Friendly Neighborhood historian. Has Trump gone mad that his days? No. We didn't do it in all caps, Rage, but you got my answer already, Maurice. I'm not going to share my beliefs one way or another. I get people on this channel who absolutely love Donald Trump and people who absolutely hate him and people who think this way about Israel and people who think this way about Palestine. And I welcome all of you to share your different perspectives and backgrounds and to share and to add in what you think. So, do you play history games like Total War? Total War is definitely a great one. I don't play Civilization. Did Europeans bring democracy to the Americas, or did they learn democracy from the Americas? They brought democracy there, but some of the natives, particularly the Iroquois, were practicing some form of democracy. But not all, but very few of the natives, compared to the overall number of tribes, were actually practicing it. Why does only ASML, a Dutch company, have a monopoly on manufacturing chip-making machines? I don't know if that's true. Is that rare earth mineral stuff? Because that's definitely not true. I'd never support Trump because he's a dumb orange with no clue about politics. Well, you've shared your opinion. Thank you. Now the internet knows how you feel about somebody who thinks about you almost never. And actually, I do know for sure he never thinks about you. He never thinks about me. He doesn't know who we are. Shias live in Iran, India. Sunnis live in Pakistan, Saudi. Yep, definitely true. It's geographical. Muawiyah. Yeah, that's right. Muawiyah. Can you agree that Polk started the Mexican-American War with the intent of slavery, not solely, but was a contributor? No. He did not care about slavery, James K. Polk, but he started the war on false pretenses to expand manifest destiny. He was a Jacksonian Democrat who believed that America was exceptional and needed to expand westward. Normally, I think you would like that idea, Hars, because you're kind of a nationalist kind of guy. But Polk didn't care about slaves. He owned slaves. He didn't care about it spreading. The thing that you have to understand about Jacksonian Democrats is many of them were slave owners, and many of them didn't really care that slavery would spread westward. John Tyler didn't. He was a Jacksonian Democrat at heart. Van Buren, because he was a Northerner, was against slavery, and so he didn't want it spreading to new states like Texas. That's why he didn't put Texas in the Union. He was the only, I just did a video about this, he was the only base Democrat in the 19th century until Grover Cleveland. But all the Democrats were pro-slavery, pro-segregation, pro all sorts of horrible things. And of course, many Republicans were too. Let's not pretend that it was just one party. But Van Buren... but Jacksonian Democrats believed in manifest destiny, westward expansion, the U.S. seizing controls of the continent, taking advantage of the resources, displacing their potential enemies like the natives and the Mexicans, making America as powerful as it possibly could, going from sea to shining sea. And if slaves were brought along, so what? Texas was south of the Missouri Territory. According to the Missouri Compromise, it was going to be a slave state no matter what. ISIS are calling the caliphate in Africa. That means attacks for Europe. Yeah, I do a daily news report here on the channel. It's amazing how much news is going on in Africa that nobody is aware of. But there's Islamic-backed states in West Africa and in Somalia and in Mozambique, and they're trying to do everything they can to push the Islamic State and the caliphate into Africa. Do you know anything about cannibals in the South Pacific Islands who are some of Captain Cook's people? If I'm correct, he was killed. They weren't cannibals, but they did dismember him. I don't believe Captain Cook was cannibalized. Can you get into politics in America without being loyal to Israel? I think so. I mean, Zohran Mamdani and Bernie Sanders have done pretty good. Are you aware of Islamic abrogation? Not off the top of my head. You're gonna have to define that for me because I probably do know it but haven't heard it. You know, I really like unexpected history, things in history that tend to be unexpected things nobody expects, like the Spanish Inquisition. That was funny. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Muslims are going to do many attacks at once all over Europe, I bet. I don't know about that. China and India getting closer nowadays. Yep, kind of a shove off to the Trump administration, trying to get India to do U.S. bidding. It's true they're saying they're going to blitz UK schools. I don't talk rubbish. We'll see. Abrogation and Sunni interpretation is what makes Islam dangerous. Muslims believe they should emulate the life of Muhammad. Oh, yes. And that's definitely common in Wahhab Islam, which is popular in Saudi Arabia, a Sunni country. But radical Islam dominates Shia Iran. So you got a lot going on there. It's this idea that the Muslims felt they were being punished by the oppression of the Turks, who were Muslims and believed they were the real caliphate, but then by the Europeans and the U.S., that they had become weak in geopolitical situations because they had abandoned Islamic teaching, and that Allah was punishing them. So reapportioning, getting back to that ancient Islamic teaching would purify them and would make them formidable and strong. And in some ways, it has. Let me see. So happy to see your happy face and happy to see you. I can't see your face, but I'm sure it's very happy. Because we're friendly neighborhood history. Do you think Tommy Robinson will actually lead a revolt on September 17th? I heard him on Trigonometry recently. He's an interesting bloke. I'll say that. I don't know. He's like, I think he's tired of this whole thing, so he's just gotten to the point where it's like, cool, violence, that'll work. E. Fridden, thank you. Time travel is real. What battle would you see? Ooh, Austerlitz. Do Russians actually wrestle bears for entertainment? I don't think they do too well if they did, but the Russians are stolid people. I hope you have an awesome day too, Buckeye. Great to see you. I'm trying to catch up to the chat. If I haven't answered your questions, I will do so soon. We're going to go for about another 15 to 20 minutes or so. Is it impossible to not have a bias? What is your bias in history? Because it fits the motif of the channel, because I'm friendly neighborhood history, I tend to look at negative history and want to know the context of it. So I have a bias towards friendly history. I have a bias towards wanting to see the positives in history. People have pointed out in the channel, longtime friendly neighborhood historians, that history is just too myopic. It's too sad. It's too tragic. And there's many tragic and horrible things, but there's plenty of great things too. And we need to talk about that more. So my bias is towards exposing the good things about history. So if it looks like I'm defending the West and the United States too much, I defend the Mughal Empire and how well they treated the Hindus in a Muslim empire in South Asia. I talk about the incredible accomplishments of the Ming Dynasty. I talk about the treasure fleet of Zheng He. I talk about a bunch of incredible things in the histories of other countries. The reason I don't go into prolific detail about them is because everybody seems very comfortable, and they're mostly Westerners, to just attack the West. And attacking Western history is cool because of people like Howard Zinn. And that narrative isn't fully true, and it's a bad faith narrative anyways. But it's easy, and it's cool, and it's chic. It's almost ubiquitous to just attack Western history from a historian. So I was like, well, what would be interesting? Somebody who doesn't just constantly attack Western history and doesn't just throw Charlie Kirk and PragerU points at, but actually goes into the detail of what that history looks like and says, yes, but... what's the deal about people saying Canada was the reason the Geneva Convention was made? I don't know. Canada being accused of violating the Geneva Convention is crazy. Maybe some actions during the Great War when they were helping out their British allies on the front lines. The Geneva Conventions were put in place because of the horrors of the Great War. What's wrong, orange people? Don't be racist. Yeah, those Oompa Loompas need love too. People need to understand, most people don't like sharing who they vote for. When I vote, I don't go around telling everyone, not to my friends. I privately share it with people, how I vote or how I think about something. But people in the United States are too often pressured into, you have to vote this way, or you're wasting your vote. There was an election I didn't vote in, and both sides were like, people I knew were like, you are wasting your vote, and you're going to be the reason America goes downhill. And I'm like, no. Most people in the United States, or at least a significant portion of people in the United States who can vote, don't vote. And we've been doing just fine. Saying Indians are the sole reason for constitution of the war when America still buys Russia rare earth minerals. Yes, that's true. India buys at a much more significant pace, and the reason is to destroy the stranglehold of BRICS on India's economy. It's not saying that India can't trade with Russia. It's that they want India to stop buying Russian oil. And it's a way to put pressure on the Russians to end the war and also to get them to buy American oil. Democrats started the KKK, Republicans ended it. Partially true. But the KKK was the Southern Democratic terrorist wing in the 19th and then again in the 20th centuries. In CWAG, they were formed in Wisconsin, of all places. The Republican Party is from Wisconsin. Is it true some in the North had slaves too? Yes. Many people in the North had slaves into the 19th century. I wanted to go with a smaller knot. I've got bigger ones, but this is like a nice little kind of, I like them thin sometimes. A tie knot works. Thank you for sharing that, Faith. I'll have to look into this. Black Americans love to talk about being slaves. My Irish were slaves. We don't cry about it. The British systematically starved millions of Irish people to death in the 1830s and 40s, something that American slave owners never did. The Irish then came to the United States because of it. Mexicans worship money. I don't like them. Go to Florida, see the Cubans and Puerto Ricans. You'll want the Mexicans out. Not all Mexicans. Don't be racist. Get asked about U.S. liberty? Yes. See, this is the thing. And I have to go on a rant about this. I'm sorry, Salinger, but you brought up a great point. And I promise I will get to your comments and questions as soon as you can. And if you're liking this, like and subscribe, all that. This is the thing. I'm going to make this very clear. I'm going to save this clip and I'm going to put it on the channel for everyone to see. People act, the anti-Semitic wings, usually on the right, sometimes on the left, act like nobody has ever heard of any of the bad things Israel has done, when they are constantly bringing up all the bad things Israel has done. I'm very well aware of USS Liberty. I'm very well aware of the Lavon affair. I'm very well aware of these historical things. I have talked about them a lot. People on this channel know that it's true. No, you're not going to hear about it constantly in American media. No, yet is the U.S. trying to help its ally? Yes. Does Israel have an influence on the American government? Yes. Is Israel a satellite/puppet state of the U.S. in the Middle East and used as a democratic outpost for U.S. interests in the Middle East? Absolutely. All of these things can be simultaneously true. Is Israel fighting a war to defend itself, as every war in Israeli history has been? Yes, to survive, basically. Are the Palestinians suffering way too much? Yes. You can balance all of these crazy opinions together. I just don't like when people pretend that we've never heard of these things before because the U.S. government is working with Israel to cover all of it up, when it's like, no, it's right there. You can learn about it, and I'll talk about it in 30 seconds, and you'll learn about something you didn't know about. So stop pretending it's all conspiratorial, because I can survive on a platform like YouTube, which is notorious for censoring a lot of people, and talk about it and have no problems whatsoever. People are a lot of people can criticize Israel and the Jews a lot, and they do, and they're allowed to have that perspective. I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe people should be allowed to criticize different things and can ask about it. But I'm going to say this. I am tired of every single live stream answering at least maybe half a dozen questions, and that's a liberal low estimate of how many of Israel-Palestine. Israel done this, Israel done that, Israel is this, Israel done that. And there's always 3 or 4 people who want to talk about how bad Israel is. And I get it. I understand your frustrations at this war. You're allowed to have that opinion and perspective, but you've got to have a holistic one. It's not all one way or another. And that's kind of why I reject the Zen narrative of history and the flag-waving bald eagle narrative, America's perfect narrative, because history is not one or the other. People who are doing this are insulting my profession. They're insulting history when they just want to make it one way or another. Rant over. Okay, what do you know about Blackbeard? Edward Teach really only operated for a few years. I have a video of him here on the channel. Golden Age of Piracy, 1710 to about 1720. The English were willing to let him off of with a slap on the wrist compared to murder if he would have surrendered, but he felt like he had no choice. He had several chances to actually stop, and he just felt like he was in too deep. And then, of course, he was killed. I forget the name of the battle. I forget the name of the English. It was a captain, but he chased him down and was able to kill him. So, yes. Let me see here. Muslims don't need to attack Europe. Europe became Democrat, bent over, just-handed. There's no Democrat. I don't know what you mean by Democrat. I think you're just being political. Okay. Let me see. Going through the chat. Do you know Britain are tariffing way before Trump? Got any idea about 88% tariff on India in those days in British era? Not surprised. Extractive economies, extremely common for Europeans in their colonies in the 19th and 20th centuries. Muslims and Jews definitely have plans to take over the world. Read the Quran or type in 109 Jews and look into it. Sure. Might as well at this point, Seawag. Trying to catch up to the chat. Let me see here. My personal opinion is that Islam will explode in Europe over the next 5 to 10 years because of higher birth rates, but the second generationers will be atheistic and third generation will be Christian converts. Who knows? We'll see. Subscriber here. What's your take on Confederate statues? I understand the need to learn about Confederate history, and I don't think that the statue should just be taken down. But I think if you have a better option for a potential statue, put that statue up. The Confederates were a conquered nation. They were a rebellious nation to the United States. Were they Americans? Yes. Did they start a war to attack the United States? Yes. Were they defeated by the United States? Yes. I understand why people want to embrace parts of their culture and history and study it, but that doesn't mean you wave it like a flag. Waving the Confederate flag, Germans don't go around waving the Nazi, some Germans do, but most Germans do not go around waving the Nazi flag. You can learn about something in history without glorifying it or putting it on a pedestal, literally. Gaza and Palestine, what's your opinion on it? The war needs to end. There. I'm not going to say which state I'm from. Islam only spreads with war because it's not God's word. Muhammad, the founder, slept with a 9-year-old. It's in the book. Can't fully argue with that. To be fair, though, assuming you're coming from a Christian perspective, the Virgin Mary was probably only 12. So Mughal Empire were not that good. They used to destroy Hindu temple. Don't forget they were not even that nice. Even today, Muslims are like this in India. They were far nicer. They were far more peaceful in India and better at creating religious harmony than future conflicts with Muslims, which obviously led to the Pakistan separation in 1947. Taking down the statue of the cadets, our new market was vile. I'll have to learn more about that. Does Trump color his hair? Possibly. I don't really care what he looks like. Thoughts on Indian Slavery Act 1843 by the British. Wasn't that where they banned slavery in India? The British banned slavery, they banned sati, they did a bunch of things that, well, you don't like colonization, well, you don't like extractive economies, well, you don't like the privation of the Indian people under the British, were actually, from a Western perspective especially, were better for the Indian people. Sati was a horrible practice. Slavery was a horrible practice. I love the way you handle yourself with the barrage coming in with such negativity, yet you deflect with so much kindness and humility. I do my best to be as kind and respectful to everybody. Everybody deserves that. Do you want to debate how absolutely insane the founder of your religion... Oh, geez, here we go. Muslim stuff again. Why does everyone seem to forget we fought Canada in the War of 1812? Because Canada was controlled by the British and the war was mainly against the British, and we lost that war. Sorry, my American patriotic friends. I sympathize with you, but America did not win the War of 1812. Let me see here. Why are women in Palestine fat but babies are starved? Because those two things can simultaneously exist. Some of the children who have been shown to be starving are indeed suffering from other conditions, but it's not. But there are definitely starving children there. There are starving people all over there. Yeah, and you've got three different problems. You've got lack of proper access to aid. Which means you're being targeted when you're trying to get that aid. You have the Hamas trying to steal some of the aid. You have raiders and bandits who are just kind of brigands who are taking it for themselves. It's being sold in, some of the aid is being sold in, because prices are increasing for these supplies through price gouging. The government is selling these back in northern Gaza. It's actually true. So that is not helping the people. Abrogation is the idea that the peaceful verses in the Quran should be overlooked once. Oh yeah, the newer, more violent verses. I didn't know what it was called, but yes, I have heard it. Thank you, Corzo. Let me see here. Like and subscribe. Good, in no way affiliated. Great to see you. My time travel battle be for Celis in Greece at Caesar side. That'd be a good one, Salinger. I like that one a lot. I would want to watch him just rip the Vercingetorix apart. Let me see here. I'm not answering all of the comments because you guys are kind of going in your own way. And hugs all around to you too, Melody. Israel is an imperialist agent masquerading as a legitimate democracy. Fair perspective. A lot of people think that, Pravda. I think... I'm not going to play the whataboutism about it. I can see where you're coming from, and you definitely have elements of that in the far right of the government pushing more and more into the West Bank at like the worst possible time. So there is an element of that going on. I would also say Israel is an interesting position. I do see it as a democracy, but the way Israel is positioned is obviously around people who want to destroy them. So it doesn't act like a democracy like France, Great Britain, or the United States does. If the United States was constantly surrounded by people who wanted to destroy it, it would probably do some underhanded and morally reprehensible things as well. I'm not saying that Israel is good for doing this. I'm saying that it's really, it's a position that is compromising, to say the least. And that's something that they seem sometimes to be very eager to do. India is in a weird time right now. I mean, we love Israel and Israelis hate Russians and Indians love Russians. Okay, then. Profession, what are you, 18? Thank you for thinking I'm so young, but I'm a historian, and yes, you can guess how old I am. I'm not going to share it. What do you think of a deep state? I think there's obviously some sort of people who work in government who use their power in government to aggregate more power for themselves and try to make backroom deals. What do you think of the news in British where they are saying illegal to wave the Union Jack in their own country? I think it's absurd. Or the Cross of St. George. Cross of St. Andrew is the blue one. Cross of St. George is the English one. Cross of St. Andrew is the Scottish one. And then the Irish one is green. They combined all of them to make the Union Jack, by the way. Would a true communist country work? The answer must be yes. A true communist country where you have a fully mechanized society. They have a revolution. They overthrow their government. Millions of people probably die. And then you have equal owning of all of it. I just don't think so. I think any civilization that has gotten closer to implementing pure communism tends to struggle even more. And I think, I think Stalin, although he was definitely not a Marxist elite or intellectual, felt very strongly that forcing the industrialization of Russia was the only way he could get to pure communism. And Marx knew that too, but Marx was astounded that nobody in the West really wanted it. So has real communism been tried? Not really, but because it's never been popular enough to get there. People just don't want it at a certain point. There's actually an equilibrium moment, and it's not when a society is fully developed where communism can come into power. It's at a point where they are provincial compared to their neighbors who are more economically beneficial, like the West. So that's what we've seen. That's what we saw in Russia. That's what we saw in China. 215,000 Islamic terrorist attacks worldwide since 9/11, and Europe just lets them in. Yes, Christians have never attacked anyone. We get it. Mamdani is a Shia Muslim who's affiliated with the Twelver branch that derives the Iranian mullahs. The Twelvers don't fear Armageddon, they embrace it. Interesting. I don't think he's that radical. I mean, what are we going to... I don't see women in burqas in New York City, but the burqas are rainbow colored because they're pro-LGBTQ. I don't see that. I think he's a very liberal Muslim. Let me see here. Is it not true that the USSR only began parading ballistic missiles on their May Day celebrations after the USA started storing their nuclear weapons in Scotland? Yes, and same reason why the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, because nuclear weapons were in Turkey. It's the same reason Russia does not want them in Ukraine and has used that as an auspice to fight that war. But they are terrified of this. Russia is terrified of invaders. Regarding Confederate flags, you state Germany does not go around flying Nazi flags. However, that's just because America taught them shame. Italy and Japan still respect their World War III soldiers and generals. Yes, and they shouldn't. And by the way, Gaihan is referring to World War II as World War III because that's the perspective here at the channel. I don't think Hideki Tojo was a good person. I don't think Benito Mussolini was a good person. And I don't think Stonewall Jackson was a good person. Great generals, great military leaders, yes. Great people, no. Let me see here. But the amount of things the British looked and killed, ruined India doesn't justify their actions. No, the country is suffering. True. I mean, you got trillions of dollars extracted. What is it? 46 trillion potentially extracted. You've got millions dying in the Bengal famine. But I don't think India's problems are only because of the British. I think that's too myopic. Let me see here. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Appreciate you. People, I'm not going to answer everything. Notifications, cuss words detected in the stream now or you'll be banned. Hilarious, fantastic. I don't use cuss words. In fact, people on the channel do, and I don't read when they do say that. Oops, deleted the wrong message, but that one should have been deleted anyways. Let me see here. Europe still has their hand in the Middle East, has no real power in Europe. Islam has no real power in Europe. Yes, that's why there are millions of Europeans going into Saudi Arabia and not millions of Arabs going into Europe. Thank you so much for never giving up. I know you've been through a lot. I just love your content. You are now expanding all the help. I so appreciate that, Melody. That's so kind of you. It's so good to see you again. They say history is told by the winners. What is an infamous time said winner was proven a lie? That's a great question. Thank you, Pizza Burger, for that great question. I think definitely in our understanding of the paternalism, the Europeans wanting this idea of civilizing the Africans and the Indians, but just making them suffer horrible existences in many cases. Leopold in the Congo, the Bengal famine I just mentioned, those are some good ideas. There's 5 major deep states: the Jews, Muslims, Nazis, Romans, and English monarch. Okay, CWAG, you're entitled to your wrong opinion. Does Elon Musk hate the deep state? Yes. You need to read your Bible, mate. I love the way you handle yourself, keeping up the good job. You're wonderful and interacting with people. I try to be. People don't make it easy, and some people make it way too easy. But I try to be as nice and fair as I can be. You're not banned, Magnus. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Marx was an upper-class Jew that never worked a day in his life. Relied on Engels' patronage. Yes, there is some truth to that. When I say stuff, I don't mean to offend anyone. I'm honestly just speaking. And we allow you to speak here. I let anyone share any perspective they want. That's why you have different things floating around the chat. That's why you have people talking about how Trump looks ugly, and you have people talking about how the Jews have caused all of our problems, and people talking about how the Muslims are at the root of all the world's ills. And I don't agree. I'm not condoning the ability to free speech. Doesn't mean that I agree with what somebody is saying. But people should be allowed to say what they want, and as long as they're not inciting violence or just just distracting the chat. There are times when I do delete a bunch of comments because people are just distracting the entire chat and I can't focus. But I typically tend to let people say what they want, especially when we've got a lot of going on. I don't know who invented the IMAX camera. What is your opinion on the political and economic, not economical state of the world right now? Nationalism is on the rise. The right is ascendant in the West. The economic tariffs for the United States are creating a geopolitical economic rearrangement that the Americans think will benefit them, but could easily not. We'll see. Although it is benefiting them in the West. Thank you so much, Melody. You are so kind. Thank you. Your comments when I'm dealing with everyone all at once are just a blessing. So I really appreciate you. I wish I could donate to your channel. Did Atlantis trade with Egypt? I don't think Atlantis existed. I think it's just an ideology to explain a mythology about pride, and that's how Plato used it. Mamdani has aligned himself with the Muslim Brotherhood by going to their mosque. That's part is, so there's this globalized the infantility. There's comments he's made about Islam that obviously put Westerners on their heels, but I just don't see somebody who's talking about ending the police as being a radical Muslim. I think that's just Americans being Islamophobic about some things. Isn't the Middle East somewhere in like Russia or something? Yeah. Great job, Butthead. Where's Beavis? Why didn't Beavis come? I would have preferred to hang out with Beavis. Indians can't trust the United States when in 1971 the U.S. tried to attack India because Indians were trying to liberate Bangladesh, East Pakistan. Then USSR come front and supported the Indians in their darkest times, trying to make you socialist and communist, by the way. And I don't think Bangladesh would have seen it that way. So do you feel you personally owe in the culpability of slavery for America's past? Should Southerners feel shame for their historical ties to the admittedly Traders Confederacy? That's a fantastic question and allows me to explain something very, very central to my historical philosophy. I don't owe anyone a dang thing. I owe people for what I have done. And I don't think, and let me put it to you this way. I am not descended from slave owners. My paternal side fought in the Union Army. I'm not owed anything. I'm not owed a thank you from Black Americans for my ancestors helping free their ancestors. And if I owned slaves, I don't owe an apology because I didn't do that and they didn't experience that. And slavery was horrible. It had a particularly nasty, virulent, and racist streak in the United States. I am not denying that. But the same way that being part Italian, I'm not owed apologies from the Irish for how badly my ancestors were discriminated against in the United States. Or no, I don't believe in this idea of shaming and blaming everybody in history. That's what they do in politics. I'm not going to do that in history. That's when you're trying to politicize history, in my opinion. I think the descendants of Confederates, even descendants of slave owners. Remember, the vast majority of Americans did not own slaves. Even the majority of the Southerners owned very few or no slaves at all. The Southern plantation from Gone with the Wind was the minority of the ultra-rich 1% Southerners. The vast majority of Southerners either never owned a slave or owned a couple for a short amount of time. That is the most likely scenario. So the idea of all slavery, Southern slave owners owning lots of slaves, not true. Completely bogus. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this for a very specific reason. I don't think that the descendants of Confederates should feel ashamed for what their ancestors did. They should feel that it was wrong, but they shouldn't be made to feel bad about that, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that we should go around parading the statues of Confederate rebels who were destroyed by the Union Army. Russia is typically seen as bad. Why don't the same people acknowledge how Britain was pretty power hungry in its history too? They were. Russia, it's the Cold War. The British helped the Americans during the Cold War. It's that simple. The U.S. won the last World War, what I consider to be World War III, and the winner gets to make the rules. And the rules were Russians bad, British good. But the West is also really good at critiquing itself, and plenty of people in British know just how racist and imperialistic and nasty the British were in the past. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not talking about corporate guilt. I'm talking about individual guilt in my response to Gaia Han. I'm saying I individually don't owe anything. That doesn't mean the United States didn't need to help African Americans stabilize themselves. They tried to, and it never got anywhere because Grant's administration screwed it up. How do you feel that a petition was made for a new general election and the answer from the government was no, simply because they're still fixing the problems? Because labor knows it'll lose everything, and Stramer wants to stay in power. I never thought Trump became this evil mad king. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. Just because they are doesn't mean they have power. If they try to rise it up, it would be worse than what happened in World War III. Could be. I'm talking history. I'm talking social studies, Torah, all of this stuff. What do I not know, Neil, other than the fact that you screaming doesn't make your answers any better? This year, why did more people than average worldwide who were in power won before losing an election than normal? Political changes, new changing tides, all of that stuff. Thank you, Melody. So kind of you. What is Neil saying? Yes, I'm a very nasty young man. Clearly very nasty. Yes, everybody here thinks I'm very nasty, but thank you for watching from the UK, homie. Let me see. The Bible and the cult. Okay, people are going back and forth in the chat. Pakistans are killing Bengalis. Then they killed over 1 million people in those days. Bangladeshis came to India for refuge. Yeah, some of them, and some of them stayed in East Pakistan. I don't think Rahman, what was his name? Muhammad Rahman felt that way, the founder of Bangladesh. How is the weather in your country? Too hot for me to wear my smoking jacket like I normally do. Let me see. Stalin was particularly bad with the gulags. Yep. Should the Irish get reparations? No. There you go. Stramer. I don't really care. He's not going to be in power much longer. I won't have to pronounce his name much longer. Any thoughts on Göbekli Tepe? I'm half Turkish. Göbekli Tepe. I feel bad because you've been so nice, and I don't know that name. I'm going to have to look into Göbekli Tepe and find out who he is. I'm going to look into it. Come tomorrow. At the end of a live stream lecture, I will answer a question about Göbekli Tepe. And we do our live stream lecture every Sunday. You guys get to vote today on the topic you want me to discuss. Theodore Roosevelt is a potential option, but there are others. And so you guys get to find out what I'm lecturing on. You guys get to determine, as friendly neighborhood historians, what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. And usually there's enough time for a little bit of a Q&A at the end on. Let me see here. Hey, slaves wasn't just Africans. There were many nationalities that were slaves. If you were poor, sick, or less than, you were more likely a slave for generations. Or an indentured servant. Those were different. Are you half Filipino? Snickers, hello. No, I am not half Filipino, but thank you for thinking that. I will take that as a compliment. Hassan is the Quran. Okay, people are going back and forth. First human city. Oh, that's right. That's right. It's considered to be one of the first human cities. Long before the Hittites settled in that area. I think even before the Indo-Aryans settled there. Thank you for reminding me of that. Basically, ancient cities were typically run by a social structure that was pyramidic. You had a king or a lord who oversaw it. You had an army willing to fight, and you had a stratification of labor, and you had slaves, things like that. It's like 107 degrees here in Arizona. How are y'all like that? Crazy. But it's a dry heat, I hear, so yeah. Or am I living in Arizona right now? You don't know. Anyways, so we're at the end. I caught up to the chat, which I was happy to do. If anyone hasn't liked or subscribed, I encourage you to do so. It's great to see some new faces and some old faces here asking great questions and having some good discussions amongst themselves. I don't know what you're saying, MFCL, but maybe check yourself and check your racism. But please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I will take one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. I went 10 minutes over, so I hope you guys really appreciate that. And we've got tomorrow for the live stream lecture. Please vote on the topic to see what we're going to be discussing here. So let me see. Anyone have any last questions? It's my pleasure, Prop. Always so good to see you. So happy to see you, Melody. Seawag, that's a randomly weird thing to say. What drove British Empire? Do you think all countries were expansionist, but British bested it? Yes. I think all countries have a desire to expand and to grow and become greater, but I think the British were particularly great about it because they started cultivating a navy in the 16th century. 4 p.m. Eastern, I will be doing my live stream lecture. I'm not going to be answering every single question. I'm not going to be interacting with the chat. I'm going to be talking about a particular historical topic. Do you know Chinese historian, the YouTube commentator? No, but I should. Thank you for the recommendation. Favorite frozen food? Oh, frozen mac and cheese from Stouffer's. Come on, great stuff. I saw someone on 4chan the other day, the UBI could work by making megacorps owned by all, or B, ending all welfare programs and just distribute evenly to all. I don't know if Elon Musk deserves UBI. I don't know about distributing to all. I think there's got to be a threshold. I think if you make about $5 million or more, you will never have to worry about money again. That's basically how it works in this modern currency, and with expectations of inflation and continual economic stagflation. Only messing, by the way, Irish have a funny sense of humor. They do. I love Irish sense of humor. Do you lean more right or left when it comes to politics? I don't share my political beliefs. People on this channel call me a left-wing lunatic and a right-wing nutjob all the time because I don't always conform to the political opinions they want me to share. I correct and slam both sides. I correct and slam false perspectives, especially ones that are badly misinformed from history. Ooh, I could talk about some of the earliest cities. Göbekli Tepe, that'd be fun. Let me see. C-Wag and Hassan are beefing. Hassan, I don't know if they're beefing again. Hassan's always beefing. Usually it's just with Harry, but I guess C-Wag is the new Harry, except he's like a right-wing Harry, which is terrifying. What do you think about Israel and Palestine war? Okay, I'll end with this. For Eric, since I've never seen you before, and very Scandinavian name. That's how Eric is spelled in Scandinavia. I think the war should probably end. I talked about this earlier. And I think that there is no further justification for this to go on. I think that if the war ended, it probably would be easier to release the hostages. I think I'm just making speculations based off of what I know of history and the geopolitical situation. These are just my opinions. These are not based on factoids. These are just what I'm seeing. I think it's a very fair and moderate perspective. War ends. Israel rebuilds Gaza. Hamas goes the way of a dodo bird. Political elections in the West Bank bring in a new political party that can run a second state, and Gaza is administered by either Israel or the Gulf states, and then eventually the Palestinians are allowed to return, and Palestinians are allowed to live in Arab countries for a while. There. It's not easy, it's not foolproof, but I think that's a fair solution. Palestine war seems a scam. Do they have a world fighting Muslims or sneaking? Anyways, yes, Hassan, the Muslim who comes to this channel and does a great job, is gay. He might be. Does that matter? Thank you for showing that you're a homophobe. Where do you find these people? I don't know. They come in and maybe they like history or have a proclivity for social sciences, and then they get my recommendation, and then they're here, and then they're talking trash, or they're talking fact, or whatever they're talking. I just enjoy having an active and vibrant chat. I know that means it's going to be more people, more engagement, and hopefully more questions. So C-Wag and Hassan, I don't mind the bickering, but maybe ask me a question once in a while about history or social studies, and I'll be happy to engage with you. Iria had a lot of different points they wanted to make, but they also asked me some questions. And Hassan, you asked me a couple, and C-Wag, you asked me a couple. So maybe a little bit more of that and a little less bickering back and forth, because I don't want my people to think my chat is just full of gripers. So Salinger, hello. Okay. Okay, what? You're entitled to your opinion, C-Wag. All right, take care. I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for a really good live stream. Great questions, as always, from all of you. I hope you really enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe on your way out. I am not, but I should probably learn about that. Let me see here. Interesting. See, it's hard to look at this stuff and then not want to. Oh, you follow the social media to want to engage, but follow the social medias. I'm from the United States. I'm not going to share exactly where. Follow the social medias in the chat, please. It will help the channel grow. And yes, I love you being here. Thank you, Melody. We'll see, NC. I'm allowed to be wrong, and you're allowed to be wrong. So we'll see who's wrong about that whole thing. But yes, I'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, live stream lecture. And besides, NC, I'm making a political point, not a historical one, but just based off of what the guy actually says. Take care. Have a great night. See you tomorrow for the live stream lecture. And as always, love history.